Your silver bullets have worked wonderfully. As you've promised, it had completely incapacitated her and allowed me to execute my vengeance upon her. However, before ending her in the way that you've instructed, I was able to find the true name of my daughter's killer.
Karnstein.
Yes, but how did you—
I've had my suspicions for a while, and I think I know exactly how to find the grave. But first I must contact a priest and get rid of the remains here according to law. If you wish to head there by yourself, I would advise against it. At least bring someone along. Someone you can trust.
So, we're going to the ruins of Karnstein.
Yes, I have a special object in exploring.
The House of Karnstein has been long extinct. 100 years at least. My dear wife was maternally descended from the Karnsteins, but the name and title have long ceased to exist. The castle is a ruin. The very village is deserted. Not a roof left.
Quite true. I have heard a great deal about that since I last saw you. A great deal that will astonish you. But I had better relate everything in the order in which it occurred. You saw my dear child. No creature could have been more beautiful, and only 3 months ago none more blooming.
Yes, poor thing. When I saw her last, she certainly was quite lovely. I was grieved and shocked more than I can tell you, my dear friend. I knew what a blow it was to you.
We have been very old friends. I knew you would feel for me, childless as I am.
You said just now that you intended relating everything as it occurred. Please do let us hear the story.
I should tell you all with pleasure, but you would not believe me.
Why should I not?
Because you believe in nothing but what consists with your own prejudices and illusions. I remember when I was like you, but I have learned better. My dear child was looking forward with great pleasure to the visit you had been so good as to arrange for her to your charming daughter. In the meantime, we had an invitation to my old friend, the Count Carlsfeld. A masked ball, you know, is a beautiful sight, but so brilliant a spectacle of the kind I never saw before. It was a very aristocratic assembly. I was myself almost the only nobody present. While we were dancing, I remarked 2 masked ladies who appeared to me to be observing my daughter with extraordinary interest. My dear child was resting a little in one of the chairs near the door, but then the 2 ladies I have mentioned had approached, and the younger took the chair next to my daughter, while her companion stood beside me. She turned to me and in the tone of an old friend opened a conversation with me, which piqued my curiosity a good deal. She referred to many scenes where she had met me. She alluded to little incidents which I had long ceased to think of, but which I found had only lain in abeyance in my memory. In the meantime the young lady, whom her mother called by the odd name of Milarka, had got into conversation with my child. She introduced herself by saying that her mother was a very old acquaintance of mine. She talked like a friend, she was very witty and lively when she pleased, and after a time they had grown very good friends, and the young stranger lowered her mask, displaying a remarkably beautiful face. But though it was new to us, the features were so engaging that it was impossible not to feel the attraction powerfully. My poor girl did so. I never saw anyone more taken with another at first sight. In the meantime, I put not a few questions to the elder lady, but then I was interrupted by a gentleman dressed in black, who looked particularly elegant and distinguished. The lady turned quickly to him. They walked a little aside and talked for some minutes. I spent the interval in cudgelling my brains for a conjecture as to the identity of the lady who seemed to remember me so kindly. But at this moment she returned, and was about to ask me the most unusual request.
We are older and better friends than perhaps you suspect, but I'm afraid I cannot yet declare myself. It's not safe in here. I must set out now, and travel by a devious route nearly 100 miles with all the dispatch I can possibly make. But unfortunately, my poor child will not be able to join me. Her horse fell with her, and her nerves have not yet recovered the shock. Our physician says that she must on no account exert herself for some time to come. I must now travel day and night, on a mission of life and death, a mission the critical and momentous nature of which I shall be able to explain to you when we meet in a few weeks at your beautiful Schloss, without the necessity of any concealment.
And then she went on to make her petition. It was simply that I would consent to take charge of her daughter during her absence. This was, all things considered, a strange, not to say, an audacious request. She in some sort disarmed me by throwing herself entirely upon my chivalry. At the same moment my poor child came to my side, and besought me to invite her new friend, Millarca, to pay us a visit. At another time I should have told her to wait a little, until at least we knew who they were, but I had not a moment to think in. The two ladies assailed me together, and I must confess, the refined and beautiful face of the young lady determined me, and quite overpowered I submitted and undertook too easily the care of the young lady. The Countess beckoned to her daughter, who listened with grave attention while she told her, in general terms, how suddenly and peremptorily she had been summoned, and also of the arrangement she had made for her under my care. She whispered a few words to her daughter, kissed her hurriedly twice, and went away.
She is gone.
She is gone, I repeated to myself, and for the first time reflecting upon the folly of my act. That day Millarca came home with us. I was only too happy, after all, to have secured so charming a companion for my dear girl. There soon, however, appeared some drawbacks. In the first place, Millarca complained of extreme languor, and she never emerged from her room till the afternoon was pretty far advanced. In the next place, although she always locked her door on the inside, it was discovered that she was undoubtedly sometimes absent from her room in the very early morning. She was repeatedly seen from the windows of the Schloss, walking through the trees, and looking like a person in a trance. This convinced me that she walked in her sleep, but this hypothesis did not solve the puzzle. How did she pass out from her room, leaving the door locked on the inside? How did she escape from the house without unbarring any door or window? But in the midst of my perplexities, an anxiety of a far more urgent kind presented itself. My dear child began to lose her looks and health, and that in a manner so mysterious and even horrible that I became thoroughly frightened. She was at first visited by appalling dreams, then, as she fancied, by a spectre, sometimes resembling Millarca, sometimes in the shape of a beast. Lastly came sensations. One, not unpleasant but very peculiar, she said, resembled the flow of an icy stream against her breast. At a later time she felt something like a pair of large needles pierce her with a very sharp pain. A few nights after followed a gradual and convulsive sense of strangulation. And then she was gone.
You may guess how strangely I felt, as I heard my own symptoms so exactly described in those which had been experienced by the poor girl, who, but for the catastrophe which followed, would have been at that moment a visitor at my father's chateau. You may suppose, also, how I felt, as I heard him detail habits and mysterious peculiarities, which were, in fact, those of our beautiful guest, Carmilla.
Here it is, the ruins of Karnstein.
Finally. So this was once the palatial residence of the Karnsteins. It was a bad family, and here its blood-stained annals were written. It is hard that they should, after death, continue to plague the human race with their atrocious lusts. Over there I possibly may be able to find the thing of which I am in search, the grave of Mircalla, Countess of Karnstein.
We actually have a portrait of Mircalla, the Countess Karnstein, at home. Would you like to see it?
Time enough, dear friend. I believe that I have seen the original, and one motive which has led me to you earlier than I at first intended was to explore the chapel which we are now approaching.
What? See the Countess Mircalla? Why, she's been dead more than a century.
Not so dead as you fancy, I'm told. There remains to me but one object which can interest me during the few years that remain to me on earth, and that is to wreak on her the vengeance which, I thank God, may still be accomplished by a mortal man.
What sort of vengeance can you mean?
I mean to decapitate the monster.
What? To cut her head off?
Aye, with a hatchet, with a spade, or with anything that can cleave through her murderous throat.
I confess, General, you puzzle me utterly.
What? Carmilla, how did you get here?
It's you.